guys. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Tuesday, October 17th, and we'll be talking a lot about hockey today. We got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game slate, as well as props and pick'em. Joining me, I know he's excited, especially since, I'm not a hockey guy, but I am a follow the projections guy, studying game theory type of guy. It's Tasteful Tides, Tim BUELL. The hockey season just started. It's a week old. Hit that. Oh, hold on. Let me make sure that everyone hits that thumbs up button. Right. Tim's on. You got to hit the thumbs up for Tim. Right. Hit the thumbs up. That T for thumbs. Hit the thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Post your questions in the chat, because I probably have some questions also. I've never played NHL DFS.
I can't believe that. I can't believe that.
I'm going to play one lineup. To be fair, Tim, the past week I have been betting NHL props. I have been doing prize picks a little, and just to show on the screen, if Steve will bring it up, we have the DFS projections. I just wanted, before we get into like DFS stuff, you can use the DFS projections for sports betting and props and pick them, because we have all the statistical projections here. You could download this as a CSV even if you want. And what I do is, I could download all of this. I could throw this into Excel. I could compare it to the lines and the prices on the sports books and bet accordingly. We make it also easier for you. So we have this, if you have the props and pick 'em package, we have the prop model, which comes from these actual projections, and it will show you. This is not updated yet, right? This is from yesterday because it's 11 in the morning.
The prop model is not updated, but the projections are. We're still updating the model. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So once the screen gets updated, it will show you basically the edges and the win percentage based on our projections of all the mostly you're doing shots and points and sometimes assists, sometimes goals, and where the best value is. And the same thing happens on the fantasy pick'em tool for prize picks and underdog. This is obviously from yesterday, but you could go to any of these tabs. You go to prize picks NHL tab, and it will show you the same similar type of things. Because obviously on prize picks, you get like the even numbers, 3s and 4s and 2s that you won't get on sports books. And it'll give you the win percentages and, which side on each win percentage. And then you could use this. If you don't want to just simply look, you could even manually look or download this. We give you the tools to make it easy for you to find long-term profitable props and pick 'em picks. I know you, Tim, Dane, Moneyball 16 also post little blurbs, the best picks of the day in this package for scores and odds.
Dane is incredible. Dane is the one who makes these projections. He is ultra sharp. He had a fantastic season last season in a fairly big sample size, and he's on a heater this year. He is probably the sharpest hockey mind in the DFS industry. And shout out to him. He does an amazing job. So make sure to follow his projections. They really are the best in the industry.
Yep, I've already had some success. A week out. I'm still trying to figure out, how the markets work in NHL. But let's move on to the DFS slate in particular. Being someone that I've never played NHL before, I'm used to, I'm a projections guy. Projections, ownership. We don't have ownership up yet. But I also know that NHL is highly correlated.
Yeah.
So there's a goal. I don't want to get into the bare basics, but there are 2 assists typically given on a lot of plays. So you're primarily similar to baseball where, you're going to play 5 guys from the Phillies. You're going to play 4 guys from a team. You're going to play, because as plate appearances rack up and everything like that, it's similar in NHL, Tim, to lines. You're more likely, if a goal gets scored on a line, getting the assists of the people that are on the ice at the same time, as opposed to trying to find, the the guy on the power play 2 line that scores from one team, the guy on the third line that scores for another team, the guy that scores for one line on the other, like I guess that would be the nut lineup. Like you would, if you want to mash buttons like you could do in baseball, like find the 8 home run.
Right.
Good luck to you.
Yeah.
But you don't need
Right.
the nut lineup in NHL, especially the NHL lobby. Like these contests aren't like huge, right? They're big.
They are today though.
They're not milli makers. You don't need
No,
the
they're not
nuts.
milli. They're not milli makers. They're not milli makers.
Right. So what are some things, like typically we see this? I mean, I'm going to the stacks page.
Yeah.
Right. This is something I would look at for baseball, for football, these quick stacks type of things. So we see like 3-3, 3-2, 3x, 2-2, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We also see, exposures for, the owner for each team. Then we also see the lines to consider: L1, L2, L3, L4, PP1, PP2. Can you go on a little insight on I mean, my natural inclination is like, how often am I going to play like 3 players from the 4th line of an underdog?
I would honestly probably X out line 4 even from a favorite, unless there's a skater that you can add in manually who gets first unit power play time, which does happen sometimes, but it's pretty rare. I don't.
But is it for the most part for in NHL DFS that you're most likely going to be stacking guys from first line, second line, power play lines, pretty much?
Yeah, but you can also get pretty decent value from third line guys, because a lot of times the third line guys, I mean, generally you are correct, but there are some third line guys that will play on the first power play unit, and also you can stack the second power play unit. Usually, second power play units play about 35% of the power play time, so it's not like they're non-existent on the power play. So you can get contrarian by playing a second unit power play. That's a way, in larger fields to get different. But in terms of 5-on-5 stack, 5-on-5, I'd never play anybody from line 4 ever.
Right.
Like that's.
I mean, that's typically like the checking line. That's the
that like
right.
they're starting their shifts usually on the defensive end, so they're not getting the fantasy points that you need to get really anything. And they usually only play like 10 minutes a game, which is real bad scene.
So Tim, you're normally like a 1 lineup, small field, 1 to 3 lineup type of guy, and not necessarily, massively multi-entering and necessarily using like all the full featured tools of Lineup HQ, which you can get as a premium member. Click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month. Can I be safe to assume that the projections take into account the things that you mentioned, like the guys are only going to see 10 minutes on the ice? So like the likelihood of, if I just simply chose, if I didn't even use this column of like lines to consider, and I just say like, oh, I want a bunch of Edmonton, or I want a bunch of Colorado, or something like that, that projection wise, not considering ownership, I mean, you're more likely to get, power play 1, line 2 type. It's very rare that it's going to be like you're going to get line 4 players. You're going to get, like guys that are playing 14 minutes of ice time. You almost don't even have to worry necessarily about checking all the, like, I have to go through every team and go, okay, I want line 3 here, but not there. And like, you can almost let the projections do their job.
Yes.
But from a stacking standpoint, from a construction standpoint, heuristically, now I'm using the term heuristically. I know that there's nuance, right? Like you mentioned, well, sometimes there's a guy in this line that's a bit like, we want to make it as easy as possible. Just like I say in MLB, if you just stuck to just playing 5-3, right? Or even just 5X, and just never deviated from that, as long as obviously the slate's a decent enough size, right? That you could just go your entire MLB DFS GPP career and probably not be doing anything. You're probably going to find good things, right? Is that similar to hockey, where if I just built 3-3s, that I'm likely not going to get into a situation where I need to assess a one-off or a weird thing where it's like I may not be able to play that? Or are you more likely to do something where you're playing 3x, where it's like, well, give me 3 from one line and then a bunch of one-offs?
Right.
My assumption, at least, is just click the 3-3 button and just build lineups.
So one thing I will add is click the 3-3 button and then click that pair at least one defenseman with each stack line over to the right on your main options there.
Explain why that would be
So
useful.
that will create a 4-3-1 stack. So you end up getting a defenseman with your 3-3, which just adds exposure to that team. Now you don't have to do that, but that's a good way of making the 4-3-1 stack. Then you could also use a goalie for one of my stacks. So if you're assuming that, Edmonton 1, for instance, is going to go insane and put up 5 goals, well, you're also assuming that your goalie is going to get the win. Now, I do have some issue with this, though, because if you think your team is going to dominate offensively, your goalie
the other team doesn't get any shots.
Exactly. So I do
this is very similar, Tim, to soccer, where people ask about, I'm going to stack a team offense and then also play the goalkeeper. It's like, it's very well correlated to the win, but the ceiling for goalkeepers comes from saving 32 shots in hockey or 6 or 7 saves. And you'd almost rather have the guy that gives up a goal and have 6 saves for cheaper than the guy that just simply gets a win with not many saves.
Yeah, so I do have a little bit of issue with that theory, but it's kind of matchup dependent. If you think it's going to be a high pace, high volume game, which is a game that we'll talk about in a little bit, you can use that as an option. And on FanDuel, if you play FanDuel hockey, the win is super important for the goalie. Saves are not as important. So I would use that tool more for FanDuel than DK. That's my opinion, because the win is weighted much higher on FanDuel, and saves aren't worth as much on FanDuel. You're really chasing the win on FanDuel.
Greg Heller in the chat, and feel free to post your NHL DFS questions, because Tim will answer them, not necessarily I mean, I could have a theory of what, just based on just general DFS play. So he says he usually plays 1,000 entry, single entry. So 1,000 person field. So that sounds in your ballpark, right?
Yep.
Would you feel power play 2 is necessary to include as a possible base for my main stack? I generally go line 1, line 2, power play 1.
So would he add power play 2 as like a main component of his team?
I guess
probably not. Probably not. That doesn't sound necessary to me. It's very matchup dependent, though. Some teams play their power play 1 like 80% of the time, okay? And then some teams play their power play 1 50% of the time, okay? But that's baked into the projection, okay? Like we know that information, okay? So there are certain teams that really overload their power play 1, and then there's other teams that is a true 50-50 split. So it's kind of team dependent, but that's all baked in to the projection.
Okay, so I've never used this for hockey. I'm getting an error. Do I have to set like second stack Mac? Do I have to? Is this? Just want to make sure. Okay, I guess I needed to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In baseball, if you just leave them to zeros, they get treated as hundreds. Right. So I'm just running 20 lineups, 3-3, nothing. I've literally nothing changed.
And you paired a
defenseman,
which I like. Now,
so it's giving me the top. So let me go through, because you're gonna have to explain stuff to me.
Yeah.
It's giving me what it seems like Wild Islanders. So basically, I'm getting power play 1. I mean, I'm getting a lot of Kaprizov because obviously, based on the projections, it seems like he's very underpriced, which means that other players from his line is going to probably stick to him, right?
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
similar to baseball where you have like or football, like when you have this underpriced receiver or something. Next thing you know, when people set stacking rules, like, yes, like a lot of like you got this $2,600 batter and another $4,400 batter that probably should be $5,600. Next thing you know, 16% of the field has that, the Minnesota Twins as a stack because their mean projection in total is very high. So that's like a way to understand what the optimizer is doing, since it's just a knapsack problem solver. So I'm getting Wild, I'm getting Islanders. And it
Yep.
all seems like, outside of one Ryan Hartman, he's in the first line, but he's in the second power play unit.
Correct. So you're getting
Uh,
Minnesota 1 at even strength.
hmm.
And then you're getting a lot of Islanders even strength 1 and PP 1.
Okay, and then the other position, so I'm getting 4 from the Islanders, 3 from the Wild. I'm getting
Yep.
the San Jose goalkeeper, and then I'm getting like the cheap
You're getting
Coyotes.
You're getting the cheapest goalie on the slate blender, who is the biggest underdog on the slate, okay? Who plays for the worst team in the NHL, who's playing against probably the best team in the NHL, okay? That's how much it's a good idea to punt goalie, okay? Like,
Because
you
even
can
if he
see
gives up 3 goals, it's quite possible he still puts up enough points with all the saves.
exactly. Like, I think he's projected to give up like 3.5 goals, which is quite high. But he's going to see a ton of volume, a ton. So that just shows you, like, so many people make the mistake of overpaying at goalie. Now there are a couple goalies on the slate that are more expensive that I like, but it shows in the optimal Mackenzie Blackwood 6,700 on the so, and I don't think he'll be that high owned, to be honest with you. So
one thing that I notice in these lineups when we're just going by mean projection, okay, so this is the difference. Like, you have to use the concepts from other sports and see how they apply to the one that you're going to be starting to play. Now, from a mean projection, we see in baseball, right, Tim? So-and-so $2,200 outfielder, right, is projected for like 6, which is not very good. But for 2,200, that's a pretty good mean projection. His ceiling is probably low because he bats 8th for some garbage team. He probably should be 2,900, but because he's 700 too cheap,
right.
It allows you to jam in like so many high mean projected players that, from a mean standpoint, 113.27, right? Not a ceiling perspective. It allows you to do all of this, that you're like, okay, here's a $3,500 defender. Here's a $2,200 outfielder. Here's in football. Here's the $2,600 tight end that gets 1 target, right? To make your Dolphin stack work.
Yeah.
How does that apply in NHL? Because I see in a lot of these, if I just remember, these all defaults, all just, just give me the highest mean projected lineup, that like, it's a lot of lineups where it's like, okay, I got this line, I got that line, and then what seems to be, Matt Roy, some random $3,300 defender. I could see the case probably. Let me guess. I'm going to guess first, and then you're going to tell me. This applies very similar to soccer, with cheap fullbacks on typically underdog teams, where if there's not aren't defenders necessarily worth playing on a soccer slate, a lot of times you're punting one of your defender spots just so you could spend the money elsewhere. But there are also slates where there are a lot of defenders that could score double digits in soccer, that the opportunity cost at defender becomes high enough that you'd rather not punt at a defender spot, because everyone has to play too, and getting more points at defender where points are scarce is a premium in GPP. So in NHL, are you more or less inclined? I know there's probably nuance to certain players, but in general, as a heuristic, is this the type of thing where in many scenarios you'd rather play a kind of slightly cheaper line out of your 2 lines that you're stacking to avoid playing like 2 punt defenders. Or in hockey, you'd rather do the lines are more important. The defenders are a dime a dozen. So if you have to punt in one of them, so be it.
Honestly, I think I'd rather pay the premium for the forwards. Usually, I'd rather double punt defense. Now, there's obviously nuance, like you said. It can be slate dependent, but usually I'm punting at least one of my defense spots, if not 2. Now, having said that, I play some smaller field tournaments, right, Blender? Like if you are playing the $15, $50K up top tonight, maybe, you want to pay up at defense to be contrarian. There are some incredibly strong offensive defensemen, right? That are premium offensive players. They tend to be pretty expensive, but their floors are usually more solid because they play more minutes. Defenders in hockey play more minutes than forwards. Like a premium defender in hockey, okay, will play like 25 minutes, whereas like a premium forward in hockey will play like 20. So I mean that's a significant difference. So we'll talk about like a guy like Roman Josi for the Predators. He's $7,300 tonight. He is one of the best offensive defensemen in all of hockey. All right. He's going to play probably 26, 27 minutes. Edmonton is an amazing offensive team, but they struggle defensively. And so he would be a guy that I would be happy to pay up for, whether it be in small field or large field tournaments.
So I take a look here at a line, like here's the 10th line up here, scrolling through, right? 49-3. It has, the 4 Islanders, Nelson, Engvall, Palmieri, Dobson. Then it has Paul, Hagel, Kucherov from the Lightning. Then you get the Dallas goalkeeper, and then Darnell Nurse, the $4,700 defender from Edmonton, who plays on the first line and power play. So it seems like someone like Darnell Nurse is someone that, like, you're not punting a defender there. Like he could get an assist. He's on the second power play unit. He's on the first, like he's someone that can possibly score points.
Yeah, and he plays for a tremendously strong offensive team, right? Eddie plays a ton of minutes. Now that lineup that you're showing right there, I would never play that lineup. I think it's garbage. But that's just my opinion.
Explain why, because I look at this and I go, I don't understand.
I'm just bearish on the light.
Paul, it seems like Nicholas Paul is the center for the third line, even though he's on the power play.
He does get PP1 though. He does get PP1, and he's only 4,400, so that's okay. I'm just very bearish on the Lightning in general. They're actually underdogs in this game, playing on the road, which is a big difference. So just that, I'm just looking at that one lineup. I'm not a huge fan of that, but
okay. How about this one? How about this? How about this is a lineup that plays 2 lines from the same game. So is there any correlative effects, negative or positive? Because I want to get to, could be Travis's question in the chat. Like, is there such a thing as a game stack? Like, is that like in soccer? Let me be clear. I'm going to relate this to soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, soccer possession is not linear. Like soccer, one team could have the ball 80% of the time. I mean, it's not the type of thing where it goes back and forth a lot, right? As opposed to basketball, where once a team gets a basketball,
it's back and forth.
It's always going to be back and forth, right? In soccer, the bigger the favorite, the more likely that team is going to have more and more possession, which means that even if the game is 4-2 in soccer, the 2 goals that get scored by the underdog a lot of times aren't on a sustained possession. They're on break. It would be called counters, right? Where the other side is not going to score many peripheral points because they're just not getting many shots. It's just that on a counter, they intercept the pass, they hit a long ball down and the forward scores. Well, all the wingers for the soccer team, like, they're not getting cross points, they're not getting tackles, they're not getting any of this stuff, even though the team has scored. But in games where the teams are even and it's a high total, like we see like something like Barcelona versus Real Madrid or something like that, where the total in the soccer game could be 3.5. Like, Barcelona may be only like a minus 140 favorite. Like, that's more of the game where both sides are going to get enough possession, and if a lot of goals get scored, like, you could consider a game stack.
Right.
But in most of the time in soccer, you're primarily kind of playing like guys from one team and hoping that they get all the possession and shoot the ball a lot. How does that apply to hockey?
So I think it falls somewhere in the middle between soccer and basketball. Like, you're not going to get 80% possession from one team in hockey. That won't happen. But what I like to do, for example, like, if I think Minnesota is going to dominate possession and put up a ton of shots against Montreal, I might add in a Montreal defender because he'll get the block shot bonus. Okay, so a guy like David Savard, who's 3,400 for Montreal, I might add him into a Minnesota stack because I know that there's going to be a lot of shots that he could potentially be blocking. Okay, and he's cheap enough that if he gets the 3 block bonus and maybe a couple shots, that'll be good enough. So that's the kind of. But normally, I would say game stacks are just come up organically like they do in baseball, right? Like, you don't game stack baseball, right? But sometimes
it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter, right? But sometimes you get two really strong offensive teams and their prices align so you can play them together. There's one like that Edmonton Nashville game I love for DFS tonight. Okay, both sides. So if I was building 150 teams in that $15 tournament tonight, I'd be getting a lot of exposure to Edmonton, Nashville, regardless if they're on the same lineup or not, because I like that game just in general.
Could be Travis in the chat asks, is there any intuitive, he calls it anti-correlation, negative correlation in hockey to consider? For example, opposing centers in NBA are 2 high volume scorers from the same team, like Levine and DeRozan. So we're talking about salary based. So basically, what, like, the classic example in NBA would be something like LeBron and AD for the Lakers, or Steph. The classic one is Steph Curry and Kevin Durant on the old Warriors, where they're both priced at like 10K, which means in NBA, for a 10K player, in order to hit like a GPP winning ceiling, you want like 70 points from them. But it's quite unlikely that like they both have 70 points. Typically, when one has 70, the other one only has like 45, and 45 ain't gonna cut it. So you probably, especially on a larger slate, probably ceiling wise, they're negatively correlated that you wouldn't, at their prices, if they both were 3K, you'd play them both, no problem. But at their prices, you wouldn't want to play them together. Does that apply in any regard in NHL?
It certainly applies if you can find 2 expensive guys on a team that have no correlation. If they don't play together at even strength or on the power play, that's bad news, right? You don't want those guys.
Does that happen a lot? Are there players?
It's very rare. It's very. I can't even think of an example off the top of my head where that happens. But you do not want to. I mean, really, you don't even really want 2 mid-range guys that don't correlate. Like, you have to have correlation in hockey. Like, you have to. So you've got to find the guys that skate together. And so I can't really think of an example of 2 expensive guys that have no correlation.
So it's not something. So this is not the type of thing that, like, if you use our quick stacks feature, our stacking page for lineup HQ, like, is there a need heuristically? is there a need to even use like groups of like, don't play this guy and this guy in the same lineup. Don't play that guy and that guy in the same lineup. Right?
I would say the short answer would be no.
Okay.
Yeah.
There would be unique exceptions, but
Yes.
generally,
Yes.
if that's why I want to be, this is like a 500-foot view.
Right.
Heuristically, just like in baseball, right? 5-man stack. Just go, well, can I do 4? Yeah, you can do 4, but if you just always did 5, you'd never be wrong. You may make slightly better lineups that are 4-man on certain slates, but if you didn't want to have to go into that, you just do that. So, like, if you didn't want to have to deal with it and just like, I'm going to build 3-3 lineups, pair at least one defenseman with my stack line. So essentially I'm building 4-3-1 type of lineups. And I never use groups, and I used our projections and compared them to ownership when it comes out.
Right. I mean, ownership. We haven't really talked about ownership, right? Like,
right. Well, because I don't want to talk about it because it's not up on the screen.
Right.
I want it more.
I know.
I want to get the construct. Like, dude,
Right.
if you're playing baseball, MLB DFS, and you're playing 8 one-offs, it doesn't matter what the ownership is. You're kind of playing wrong, no matter what you're doing. So, I want to make sure at least the first thing that I'm doing, right? You're teaching me, Tim, right? I'm trying to figure this out. So if I just did that, what I'm getting right now, and let's move on to the next point, I'm getting a lot of the Islanders. And I haven't heard you mention, you're like, oh, you want to play this game, you want to play that game. I'm going to assume, you tell me otherwise, that I'm getting a lot of Islanders because their medians are good for their price in combination.
Yes.
But medians aren't necessarily the only thing that you should be looking at.
I'm concerned. One, I think they'll have high ownership. Okay. And two, I'm concerned that this is going to be a low-paced game. Like not very much up and down. Like, yes, the Islanders should control possession, but they are notoriously bad finishers. Okay, they don't score a lot of goals. They're kind of a more defensive-minded team. So yes, I understand why their mean projection is so good because they are a little bit cheap. But I have overall kind of macro concerns with that stack.
Would you compare it to, Tim? Would you compare it to like an NFL? Right, NFL.
Yep.
A lot of times you'll get like, well, the Arizona Cardinals. Josh Dobbs is 5,200. Marquise Brown is 4,700. Zach Ertz is 3,000. Wilson is like 3,200, and it's like. Yeah, and you're stacking. You're like, I want to do an onslaught, and you put that onslaught stack into lineup HG. You have it run, and it's like, wow, I'm getting a lot of Arizona Cardinals lineups. And you look and you go, yeah, from a mean perspective, they're cheaper than what they should be, but they're also the Arizona Cardinals.
So the Islanders,
they have a total of 19. Like, unless you think they're going to significantly overperform their total, like. Maybe you don't win a GPP with a Cardinal stack.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm looking at a bunch of Zach Ertz on the page. Like he always projects really well, right? But he's really not that great. I think the Islanders have a 3.32 total, which on this slate it's not amazing. This game has like a 5.5 total, I think. So I mean, this is projected to be like a low pace kind of slog. That's my feeling anyway. And I think it's just their prices that brings them into the optimizer. So yeah, I mean, they're fine. I'm not playing them in my single bullet tonight. I can tell you that much, especially if they're going to be chalk. If they're going to be popular, then nah.
You think in the same terms of Zach Ertz is 32% owned on an NFL main
exactly.
Play. And it's like,
exactly.
Do you want to eat Zach Ertz chalk with no yards after the catch?
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Like probably right? We see it because we see that in NFL, right? We see Wan'Dale Robinson at 3K is going to be like 22% owned. You're like, a guy that runs 2-yard routes, like, is probably not going to kill me. And if I'm under on that guy, that's kind of your thinking when it comes to the Islanders today.
Yeah, and I would say if the Islanders are going to be popular, Karel Vejmelka is the Coyotes goalie tonight. He's 7K. Punt with him and get some leverage against all these Islander stacks.
There's a concept, direct leverage. I was going to ask you, are there any other? I would figure, obviously, playing the goalkeeper against a popular team that's being played.
Right.
Are there any other versions of, like, let's say I'm using an example. You have to tell me if this would be considered leverage. Everyone's playing the Avalanche 1 line, and the 2 line is like a third of the ownership and they're projected to score a lot of points. And so I'm just going to play the second line instead of the first line. Is that a thing for leverage?
It's definitely a thing. Definitely a thing maybe for really large field tournaments because most top lines are, usually so much better raw points than second or third lines, but they're also way more expensive. So you can use those pieces as like secondary pieces, I guess. So yeah, I mean, that is leverage, but I prefer that goalie route as leverage over what you just mentioned.
Okay, so it's not the type. Typically, if you told me that a team, it's very similar to soccer. So for instance, in soccer, if you told me Manchester City scores 5 goals, like, you're probably like, and everyone's going to play their forward and their set piece taker, right? They're going to be like there are 3 frontline guys, and everyone's like, the most popular teams are going to have, they're all going to be owned. Now, one guy may be slightly higher than the other guy, but all three frontline players are the chalk of the slate because they're projected to score 5 goals. And then it's like, well, for leverage, instead of playing any of the 3 guys, I played a defensive midfielder and the center back. And the point is that if Manchester City scores 5 goals, like, you're not going to get 5 goals from a defensive. Like, it's not going to be the game where when they score 5, it's going to all come from defensive midfielders and center backs. When they score 5 goals, at least one of the front line, like, it's going to be from the front. Maybe only 2 of them get there and not all 3. Maybe only one of them get there and not all 3. But the reason you'd be playing the defensive midfielder or center back in that scenario is that you're going for a result where Man City don't score 5 goals. They only score 1 goal, and it just so happens to come from a random player that's not one of their frontline players. Like, you're not doing this leverage thing of, well, they're going to score, like in football. Everyone's playing the passing stack, but what happens if they score 27 points on the ground and I'd play the running back? Like, that is a thing in football. But in soccer, it's just, you're not going to get a fullback that gets a brace. Like, it just, they don't play close enough to the goal that it happens often enough that when they do score a lot, you kind of know where they're coming from. And is that the similar NHL in your attitude of, like, if this hockey team is going to score a whole bunch of goals, like, if you either play the guys that are much more likely to score those goals, or you just don't play the team at all?
So there's one exception to this, and it's on this slate, and I want to talk about it. It's this Carolina San Jose game. Okay, Carolina is the best team in the NHL. San Jose, the worst team. Okay, the problem about playing Carolina is that they have 3 really strong lines, so you don't know where the goals are going to come from. That's why you're not seeing the optimizer spitting out a bunch of Carolina players, despite the fact that they have the largest implied team total on the board, right? They're projected to score.
Is that similar? I always want to relate it to other sports for people that are tuning in.
Yeah.
Is that very similar to, like, a football team? Like, we have, like, a team like, let's say, let's say the 49ers at full strength,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're like,
Right.
well, all these guys are like the 49ers are projected to score 30 points. But
Right.
McCaffrey's 9,500, Debo's 7,000, Ayuk is 6,700, Kittle is 52. Like, I'm raising their prices. And
Right.
like Purdy is expensive at decently 6,400 at quarterback. And you're like, yeah, well, they're going to score 30 points, but like it's quite possible they score 30 points and none of these guys pay off their salaries because it gets spread around. So are you saying very similarly that maybe Carolina scores 5 goals, but it comes from all different lines and like
Exactly.
no one gets there? Or it could be that they score 5 goals and it all comes from one line and you need that line.
Right. So Carolina would be a team, if Carolina 1 were to be chalky tonight, I would say if we went to Carolina 2 or 3, that would be a great place to get leverage. Now, I'm not anticipating, based off our initial projections, that Carolina isn't going to be that popular. But if Carolina 1 were to be popular, I would definitely get some leverage in large field GPP by going to Carolina 2 or even Carolina 3. I mean, that team is so deep and so good that it's like you could play any of them.
I got a question. If you left money on the table, is that a big deal or not a big deal?
I would say it's similar to baseball. You know, it's not really. I mean,
You're probably not leaving 8,000 on the table, but if you left
no. But if you leave 1,000 on the table, go for it. You know what I mean? Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to run 100 lineups just to see what comes up in our projections. Right?
Yeah.
Do we? I mean, we don't have ownership in. I just want to see because like the first 20 that came up with the 3-3 construction, there was no Carolina at all.
Right.
Right. So we're running through these. And with correlation, we also, to be clear, projections are means. Okay. I think people get stuck a lot of times using tools like Lineup HQ is not understanding the range of outcomes of projections. So, for instance, in MLB, there have been a lot of slates, especially late in the year, Tim, where if you ran mean projections, you wouldn't get 5-man Dodgers stacks or 5-man Brave stacks because the players are just very expensive, and to have 5 of them in your lineup, like you'd have to play some $5,400 pick, right? Like the mean projection goes down, but the Braves could put up 12 runs. The Dodgers could. These teams could put up the correlative effect of having 5 guys in your lineup theoretically raises your mean projection because they're all correlated to one another. Right. So it's not just if this guy hits their mean, this guy's much more likely to hit the mean. This is much more likely to happen as opposed to 8 random players together. So like, I don't mind in baseball playing lineups that are 8-10 points lower projected mean wise, but they have a high team total team. And I'm playing the Phillies with Schwarber and Harper and Real Muto. And like the mean projection doesn't look that great, but like, well, if the Phillies put up 10 runs, those 10 mean projected points I make up for because I got all the Phillies in my lineup. So I'm running 100 lineups here. I'm using the team stack summary. And you see here, I'm getting Islanders, Canadians, Wild, Oilers, right? I got 1 Carolina lineup, right? Stahl, Martinook, and it's the third line.
Yeah, it's the third. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And to me, this is why I love our projections, because our projections know this about Carolina, because we know that they spread out their ice time and they're so strong top to bottom that really, you know, it's hard to figure out who's going to get the scoring. I would
the Canadians say, okay, so if the Islands are going to be chalky and they have like a low ceiling because they play more defensively, how about the Canadians? Because in the Canadians, I see Monahan, Anderson, Caulfield, Savard, right? And then you still get Minnesota.
I do like Savard quite a bit, just as a value piece. I'm I'm not very high on Montreal tonight. I love that we're getting to a lot of Edmonton, Winnipeg, Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota to me is good chalk. That's just my opinion. Okay, I think Minnesota's good chalk. I would give a boost. I mean, if Carolina is really going to be that low owned, I would say, I would give them a boost. If you're, doing edits, right? Like, just because they have such a high implied team total, and if the field's going to say, forget it, I don't want to deal with this, I would take some shots on them for sure.
So how about a line like this? Like a lineup like here's Minnesota 1 paired with Winnipeg's 1.
Yeah, see, that to me, that's pretty decent. That's a pretty decent team right there. I like that team.
Okay. So you see, so I mean, even just using our projections and lineup HQ, I mean, like, are you seeing anything in these teams that are like, here are the Minnesota teams. It fits a lot of LA. Here's a Buffalo, a Buffalo 3
with a Josie one-off too, which I love.
Right.
I love that.
Right.
And Connor Hellebuck would be the one expensive goalie that I would pay up for tonight if I were to pay up at goalie.
So then, like, so if I saw this is a 47,600 lineup, right? It leaves 2,400 on the table, but you look at this lineup with Buffalo 3, Minnesota power play 1, Josie 1-off, and the Winnipeg goalkeeper. Like, if I were to just say if I told you I played this lineup, would you look at me and go, "What a fish"? Or would you look at me and go, "Acceptable"?
I would try to maybe pay up off of one of those Buffalo guys. You know what I'm saying?
This is the third line, right?
Yeah, you get what I'm saying? Like, maybe
I don't have to leave 2,400. I could probably spend
right. You could find somebody better off those Buffalo guys. Maybe add a Minnesota player.
Right. So I'm looking at the Minnesota guys. Like, here's Edmonton. Like, if I played something like this, like, here's a 49-9 lineup. Minnesota, but this is Minnesota's 2 from the basically power play 2 line.
Yeah.
Right. And then Edmonton's 1. And then some cheap defender 1-off. Like, but I
really like that team. That's
okay.
If you played that in GPP, I would say that's strong.
And also, this is leverage off. This is leverage off of Kaprizov.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Kaprizov is going to be the highest player.
And you've got McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman, who have huge ceilings in this matchup. So I mean, I like that team.
Okay,
that's a team.
How about this? Yeah. For the sake of it, this is the team I'm going to play. In whatever, there's probably some cheap single entry or something. I'm playing this exact team.
There's a $12. Throw it in the $12.
Okay, I'm playing this team.
Okay.
So because I need to get used to it. Like, dude, Tim. The more that me and you talk, the more unlikely that I'm going to be playing NHL DFS.
You would love NHL DFS.
Because look, everything that I explained. I mean, we're going to be getting out of here soon. I mean, this whole show. I mean, this is NHL DFS. I mean, it's the same as like teaching someone how to play MLB DFS.
Exactly.
It's kind of like I came into this show. I don't know who's on the Wild. I don't know who's on the Oilers. I don't know. But I know DFS game theory that, like, I piece together what I know from other sports and go, well, yeah, it's the same concepts. It's just how much does correlation matter? How much does leverage matter? How much does mean projection matter versus ceiling projection? And then construction-wise, just not doing anything like stupid. Maybe not being the smartest, right? I don't know the individual play. Like, I wouldn't have played this guy instead of that guy. That's a nuance. That's a non-heuristic type of thing. But like, if you're telling me that, like, I could just go to lineup HQ and kind of look through and build some lineups and get used to this, wait
till you see the ownership for that team. You'll be so excited.
Is the Edmonton 1 line like going to be low owned today?
not low owned, but I mean that secondary wild stack is going to be low owned. Edmonton is very expensive, so that'll bring the ownership down. So that team's not going to be high owned at all.
Greg Heller in the chat says, Blender, I converted to NHL being my favorite over MLB in about a week. Said you don't have to wait for the batting order to come around to recognize correlation.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to wait, like I can build these lineups right now. Obviously, ownership isn't in.
Right.
But is there going to be anything, or are there going to be, I've always seen like line changes. Is there anything that I need to look at? I mean, typically I'm not building my lineups until like a half an hour before the slate anyway. Yeah. But like if I played this line, if I entered this lineup right now, other than one of these guys like literally being scratched, is there anything that would make me go, I desperately need to go and change my lineup?
No. I mean, other than a pre-warm-up line change, which you have to come to Discord, okay? 30 minutes before the game. Dane and I are always in there. We update everything instantly. We let you know immediately if there's any changes that need to be made, and that's it. So as
that's
long
for
as
correlation primarily. It's just like you're playing 4 guys from the same line. You think you are, but one of these guys is no longer going to play on that line, is going to play on another line.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So make sure if you play NHL DFS, you head over to the Discord, because that is a extremely valuable tool.
RotoGrinders.com/Discord. You could join it. You can join it for free, right? It's available. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. Tim, you're on Twitter at Tasteful Tides, right? Even though you don't tweet that much, but you're in the NHL Discord.
I'm always in the NHL Discord, always.
So people can hit you up if they have questions, especially newbie questions, because maybe I'll even be in there and I'll ask you. It's like, am I stupid for doing this? Like kind of like I need those kind of checks of like, that's why I asked you, is this a line that makes me look stupid? Like you don't have to tell me it's good. It's more of the thing of like when I started playing NBA DFS, I did the same thing of like, I don't know anything. This seems fine. Does this make me look stupid? And if the answer is no, it doesn't make you look stupid. Like that's all I need to. You don't have to tell me if it's good, if it's something you would do. It's just like, that would be a competitive lineup, or that would be that I wouldn't look at if like that lineup won or lost.
Like that lineup that you're putting in the $12. I think that's a competitive lineup. I wouldn't play it in single entry like myself in a lower field, okay? But in a higher field, more people type contest, I would play that. I'd play that.
Okay, which is what I focus on more. I focus more on large field than on smaller field. So I don't mind fading the highest owned player on the slide. I mean, I don't mind building lineups that are higher variance.
Right.
So Tim, beginner's luck. Am I winning 50K tonight?
I hope you do. I really hope you do.
Lineup.
I really hope you do. I hope
I'm gonna put it into the main 15. I'll also put it into some like $3, $2, whatever, $5 something or others.
Yeah,
and I'll see how it. I mean, obviously, it's not gonna. Whatever happens is not gonna affect if I do anything. But thanks for. I mean,
you would love NHL DFS. You really. It
seems like I'm. You see my face. I'm like, this is doable. Like I could. Like I'm already looking at the NHL projections for props. Like there's no reason why you can't go through and
I wanted to talk about one prop with you.
Okay, what's the prop before we get out?
Kaprizov has a line for 3.5 shots on goal at minus 130 on bet MGM, and we have him projected for 4.5 shots. So that's a pretty big. Good. Yeah, I would think, right? I would think that's positive.
Minus 130 is about like 56.5% win probability, and 4.5 would be above that 3. Yeah, so if you got that on, it would be good on Prize Picks, so it would be good at minus 130. So that should be a value there.
I wanted to make sure because that would be my pick tonight for a prop. Yeah.
Okay, Tim, thanks for coming on. You'll make sure that NHL days. Maybe we'll have a little bit more NHL days on this show.
Sounds
and
good.
maybe I'll learn more, and we could talk more like Slate-specific stuff, and not just I'm a newbie.
Yep.
What are the basic things? But I'm assuming that a lot of people in the chat that do not play NHL DFS got a lot out of today's show. Send in your questions at theoryofdfs.com. Send in questions to the mailbag. Hit Tim up with the NHL stuff in the Discord. RotoGrinders.com/Discord is the URL. So go there. It'll link you there. It's in the chat. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, because I'm here. That's Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick 'em on RotoGrinders today.